And now we arrive at everyone's favorite segment, the Monthly 10, where we do a top 10 list. I have challenged Sean for this month to do his top 10 Christmas. And it could be whatever he wants to define as the top 10 Christmas. But I want to learn Sean's relationship to Christmas through a top 10 list. And that is why I have asked him to make this very silly list.
Yeah, so I sort of took a second to think about it. I sort of narrowed what I considered for the list as media that embody the Christmas spirit, which I feel like is kind of what you were getting at with the list. Is that fair, Jonathan?
I think that is a fair interpretation. I wanted to leave it open enough that you could make it your own, but I think that is true. The top 10 media that embody the Christmas spirit for Sean R. Chapman. I assume you've checked it once and checked it twice.
Yes, and some of these are nice, but some of them are very naughty. So before I get into the list, though, I had to sit down. This was a complicated process. Because the first thing I needed to do was define for myself, what are we talking about? We're talking about things that embody Christmas, things that embody the Christmas spirit. I came up with 4 categories that I posit, or these are the 4 categories that when we're talking about Christmas or the Christmas spirit, we're talking about a combination of these 4 things. So number 1 is religion. Like, it's maybe not the thing we all think about today, because obviously we have like this concept of a secular Christmas, but you know, the dude's name is in it. You got to recognize Christmas is to some extent about the birth of Jesus as invented and propagandized by the early church when it, kind of adopted existing winter solstice festivals for the Romans. Sorry, spoilers, guys, if you thought it's not true. Jesus was not born on December 25th. This is a thing that is very clearly known. So
I don't think most people, even hardcore Christians, believe that, Sean. Yes. So it's okay.
But it is meant to be celebrating that. You have the nativity story, all of that's in there. And I would include in this religious category also things recognizing the general winter solstice religious or spiritual celebrations about the like symbolic sort of like passage of time and death and the beginning of a new year. When you're thinking about things like Christmas Carol and lots of Christmas stories, they are about that spiritual representation and metaphorical representation that is imbued in the winter solstice festivals of what winter represents to people, which is death and rebirth. So that is included in that category for me. Then you also have moral values, which I have also called love, hope, and all that jazz. That's the thing where it's like, oh, it's family and it's love and it's goodwill towards men and all that bullshit, right? That's there too. That's the moral values piece. It's there. It's part of Christmas. Then we've got the less sort of religious ones. This is the wintertime vibes is one of my categories. So it's like snow, Christmas trees, like, just like the brisk mornings. It's just the feeling of winter and the aesthetics of Christmas. I've labeled here as wintertime vibes. And then the last, and obviously in a modern era of Christmas, perhaps the most dominant element, which is consumerism. So it is the act of purchasing and giving gifts, and Christmas as an entity that is a symbolic representation of consumerist culture, which is obviously a big part of what Christmas is. If you say that it's not, you're a fucking lying piece of shit, because obviously Christmas is a huge moneymaker, and it is a thing that drives part of our capitalist society. So these are my 4 categories: religion, moral values, wintertime vibes, and consumerism. All the things on my list are exemplary of one or more of these categories. So that's how I've approached this. So let's get into the list itself.
I'm so into this, Sean. You have so overcome my wildest ambitions for this list. I love it.
All right. I think you'll like this list, Jonathan. This is a list that only I would have come up with. My media that embody the Christmas spirit. My number 10, I knew I needed a Doctor Who thing on here because there's a lot of Doctor Who Christmas stuff, and I came up with this. My number 10 is the ending of episode 7 of the Daleks' Master Plan from 1965. This is the iconic moment in Doctor Who history where at the end of an episode that has absolutely nothing fucking all to do with Christmas, the main cast of the episode come back to the TARDIS, they completely break character, they get champagne out from under the TARDIS console, they have a toast, and William Hartnell turns to the camera and says to the viewer at home, and a very happy Christmas to all of you at home. And it's just an iconic moment in the history of the greatest TV show ever made. And for me, it hits a lot of points on the consumerism piece because we're talking about a piece of, advertised media that is all about, we're about this, making money off of Doctor Who is a big part of it. So it hits consumerism, wintertime vibes. It's that family at home around the TARDIS console having champagne. I mean, the wintertime vibes are off the chart. And then, Doctor Who has a lot of religious and spiritual value to me, so I'd put him some points on the religion one as well. Moral values maybe get knocked a little bit for promoting drinking to an underage audience. It's like a little bit negative, so that gets it to the number 10.
Is Susan with them at that point still?
Yeah. No. I'm pretty sure. No, I think that's after the Dalek invasion of Earth.
Okay, sure. So I was going to say, she's definitely not old enough to drink, so he shouldn't be getting alcohol out for Susan. But,
no, there is, I think Vicky is on the TARDIS at that point, and she's definitely underage, so there's a whole problem there.
Okay, well, it's good. There we go. Yeah, but you know what? I believe that the first Doctor would do that. It's good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely you would. And he did. And he broke the fourth wall. The first time breaking the fourth wall in Doctor Who. All right, my number 9, I knew I had to work some video games on this list, and I was thinking, what are some good video games that, to me, have a lot of Christmas to them? And my number 9 is Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, which this is just a good old-fashioned Christmas video game. It's set at winter. The wintertime vibes are potent. If you want to just play a video game and feel the feel of winter in New York City, Miles Morales has it for you. I've been in New York during Christmas twice at this point in my life, and I think Miles Morales just so captures the vibes of New York City at Christmas. It's awesome. And then when you're talking about like the moral values stuff, I mean, that story, it's all about, and this hits the spiritual elements as well, it's about confronting your past. It's looking back at like the life you've led up to that point, experiencing in the story of that game, a very literal death, and then from there building a better future. And so it is in that sense telling a very winter solstice themed story as well. It is a great game for the holidays. So for my number 9, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. All right, my number 8, this is what I was not ever originally thinking of, but then it became viral again, at least on my feed, and I saw it. I'm like, well, fuck, I have to put it on there. Is Coming Home, the 2009 Folgers commercial, which people may commonly more know on the internet as the Folgers incest commercial. This is a Folgers commercial that became infamous and became a huge internet meme in 2009 because it features a brother coming home. Her sister opens the door and she points to herself and says sister, so that in 1 minute you establish this is his sister. The story is about he was like in West Africa for like a charity thing or some shit, and he's come home to have some delicious Folgers coffee with his family for Christmas. But then when he comes home, he's drinking coffee with his sister on the counter while the parents are asleep. And then he gives her a present. She takes the present. It's just wrapped in like a little classic present box with a red bow on top. She puts off the red bow, puts it on her brother, looks him straight in the eyes, and says, "You're my present this year." And then the editor, who working magic, just holds on that shot for just like 3 beats too long. And you cannot help but watch it and ask yourself, is this a sex thing? Are they going to have sex? Have they had sex? What is happening? Because the editor just holds in that shot for too long. And it's like, if it was, it could have been wholesome, but whoever was the camera person, the editor, whoever was responsible for keeping that shot in as long as it was, they were into some shit. And so it is an infamous commercial that every time Christmas comes around, I feel like I see this. Obviously, consumerism, it's like an 11 on consumerism. It's a fucking commercial trying to sell you coffee by using Christmas and family to do it. It's, very blatant. Just, that's what it is. Wintertime vibes, it's a well-shot commercial. It communicates the wintertime vibes. It's the smell of coffee in the morning, in that brisk winter air. Moral values, it depends on where you sit on certain lines, but it's certainly about spending time with your family, which I think is a big part of Christmas. And it probably doesn't rate much on the religion factor, but Coming Home, the 2009 Folgers commercial, more commonly known as the Folgers incest commercial, it rates pretty high on multiple categories. All right, my number 7, one that if absolutely nobody would be able to predict. This used to be higher on the list, but then I kind of moved it around a little bit because it's not literally a Christmas thing, but it rates so high on one category, I couldn't help but put it. This is the Xbox 360 promotional video game Sneak King, where you play as the Burger King and you go and you give people Whoppers. The reason why this is here is because it rates 1,000 out of 10 points on the consumerism scale, because it is both a promotional video game promoting the company of Burger King and its delicious products, but it is also a video game that is just about the act of giving people gifts And there are lots of video games where giving gifts is part of the game. You might give gifts to a party member to increase their affection meter, but what video game is purely about the act of sneaking up on someone and giving them the unwanted, unexpected, and yet very delicious treat of a Burger King Whopper? There's only one video game that does that. It's Sneak King, and it's the number 7 greatest piece of Christmas media ever made. My number 6 is the first movie on this list is Dawn of the Dead. This is also big on the consumerism scale. Now, Dawn of the Dead is not what you normally think of a Christmas movie. It's not set during Christmas, but it was made during Christmas, and so there are unintentional Christmas decorations in the background of some shots, which gives it just a little bit of that wintertime vibes, even though it's not set during winter. But obviously, this is our other big consumerism piece. I mean, if you're thinking about what are things that make you think about and critically understand consumerism, Dawn of the Dead might be like the best piece of American media about consumerism and consumerist culture. And so it's just got to be on this list. If it's not on this list, I don't know who you are. My number 5.
And to clarify, you're talking about the 1978
Yes,
original, right?
the George A. Romero Dawn of the Dead, of not the Zack Snyder
I watched
movie.
that. Right. Well, I watched that again earlier. They're both set in malls, but the 78 one, you're so right. I had to think for a second, wait, it's not set at Christmas? Because everything inside feels chilly. It feels like a Christmas mall. You're so right about that, Sean. It's hilarious.
Well, because they could only film in the mall for the mall scenes at night, and it was during the Christmas holiday season, and so the mall was covered in Christmas decorations. And at a certain point, based on what I know, they just said like, fuck, we're not taking that shit down. Like, they're just gonna leave it up because they'd obviously have to put it back up again. So, Dawn of the Dead, great movie, and it's again consumerism. It's all there. All right, number 5. I think this is a piece of media that we can all agree everyone would include on their top 10 list. It's episode 38 of Ultraman Taro, the episode called The Ultra Christmas Tree. Now, there's a whole range, as we all know, of Christmas-themed episodes in various Ultraman shows. I picked Ultraman Taro's episode 38, The Ultra Christmas Tree, for multiple reasons. One, this is an episode where the plot of this episode, in short, is there's a little girl whose parents were killed in a previous Ultraman episode by the monster. And she is visited by an alien called the Alien Miracle, who gives her a little snow globe that lets her like see like her family and all this stuff. And then she sees in the snow globe the alien Miracle getting killed by an alien. And I'm not making this up. The alien is called the Alien Terrorist. Like, that's the name of his race, is terrorist. So he's the alien terrorist from presumably the planet Terrorist. And he kills the alien Miracle, and so the little girl has to get the help of Kotaro, who turns into Ultraman Taro, to defeat the alien terrorist and bring Christmas back to Tokyo, and he does so in spectacular fashion, even to the extent of using his Ultraman powers to cause it to snow, and then it snows on the Tokyo Tower, and then he turns the Tokyo Tower into a giant Christmas tree, and they all celebrate Christmas together, the little girl, Kotaro, and his friends back at his home. And it's a great episode. Consumerism, I mean, it's Ultraman. I mean, they're doing the shit to sell toys, so all the way up there. Wintertime vibes. It's all winter all the way. It was shot during winter. It's got a lot of great winter scenes and great winter shots. It's got your big Christmas tree. So it's got all the aesthetics of Christmas, moral values. There's no better moral, wholesome values than the family values you're getting from Ultraman. And then religion. Ultraman's, we've talked about this multiple times on podcasts. It is a big Catholic Christian metaphor. Ultraman Taro, maybe the most of all of them, because he's literally the son of the father of Ultra. So he's the son of a symbolic god of the Ultra Nebula. So he is the most Jesus of all of the Ultramans, is Ultraman Taro. So it rates very high on the religion as well, which puts it at number 5 on my list. All right, number 4, Sir Gawain in the Green Knight. This is the 14th century medieval poem that people might know now for the David Lowery movie, The Green Knight, but I'm talking about the original poem as part of the Arthurian cycle, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which of course is set, as we all know, during the Christmas season. It's set, it starts at New Year's Eve. You've got a big man called the Green Knight. He shows up. He's a knight. He's all in green. He's like, hey, well, we'll have a contest. I'll give you one of these guys this axe, and you try to chop up my head, and then in a year and a day from now, I will come and I will chop the head of whoever tried to chop my head. And Gawain, being a fucking idiot, he's like, well, I'll do it because you will be dead and nobody will try to chop my head with an axe. And he cuts off the Green Knight's head. The Green Knight then promptly picks up his head. His decapitated head laughs and is like, I'm going to see you in a year and a day, motherfucker, get ready. And so then begins Sir Gawain's classic chivalric quest, where he learns lots of great moral values. So moral values, I mean, these are classics. It's all about your like kind of knightly chivalry. It's about not sleeping with another dude's wife. I mean, that's one of the 10 Commandments. That's high moral values and religion right there for you. Wintertime vibes are intense. They're deep. It's 2 Christmases. You get the one at the beginning and the one at the end. You also have, well, he's not a big red man. He is a big green man. And there is some like literature like associating Green Knight with like the ideas of Christmas. Like obviously this is all the Arthurian cycle is all enraptured in early Christian imagery and symbolism and all that kind of stuff as well. King Arthur, of course, being a very Christian, like kind of mythological character. And so it rates very highly on those moral values, religion, and Wintertime vibes. Very low on consumerism, obviously, because it's a pre-capitalist piece of art. But consumerism to me is probably the least important of the categories when you're this high up on the list. All right, number 3. I have to say, as we enter the top 3, my top 3 are, I've kind of picked what is the greatest piece of Christmas media in video game form, the greatest Christmas piece of media in movie form, and the greatest piece of Christmas media in literature. And that's kind of how I categorize my top 3, because it kind of made it easier for me to break it down that way. So my number 3, the best Christmas video game ever made. I think you will agree with me on this one, Jonathan, when I say it. It is Witch on the Holy Night, Mahotsukai no Yoru. Which is very much a Christmas video game. It's set like during the Christmas season. Its big climactic arc happens on Christmas Eve and over into Christmas. If you're talking about wintertime vibes and wintertime vibes in a piece of interactive media, it does not get better. The Witch on the Holy Night, the music, the visuals, the artwork, and the way that they implement those into the visual novel, like the look of fog crisping on like the window at the very beginning. It's so good. It's so powerful. This was a game that I played, after moving to Texas, and it made me so deeply nostalgic for winters in Colorado. It kind of hurt. And so like that just rates 1,000 out of 10 on the wintertime vibes. Obviously a lot of good moral values in there as well. It's this big sort of story, again, a big winter solstice style story about a symbolic deaths and rebirths and all that kind of stuff. A little bit on the consumerism column, but not so much there. But really, if you're looking at, Christmas and all that kind of stuff, you really got to look at your Nasuverse, because the Nasuverse, it's all about that wintertime vibes, in which on the Holy Night is the most potent of the bunch.
I like this. Although I will say you criticized me for calling this a video game last year. Now you're calling it a video game. So, hypocrisy, which is a moral value you need to learn.
No, I experienced the symbolic death of that opinion that year. And then the rebirth of, for the purposes of this list, we were wanting to categorize it as a video game. All right.
Wonderful. I love it.
So, number 2, I think this is another thing you will agree with me, Jonathan. This is the greatest Christmas movie ever made. And it's...
Can I just guess what it is?
No, you can't guess because it's Die Hard, motherfuckers. Aha! Ha! Die Hard. It's a Christmas movie. No, it's not Die Hard. I fucking hate that shit. You can guess, Jonathan, because you know what it is. What's the best Christmas movie ever made, Jonathan?
It's The Disappearance of Suzumiya Haruhi.
Fuck yeah, it is. It's The Disappearance of Suzumiya Haruhi. No other movie even rates. You can take your Christmas Carol adaptations and wipe your ass with it. The Disappearance of Suzumiya Haruhi, that's where it's at. It's so good. It is a piece of consumerist product, so it rates a little bit on there. Wintertime vibes, intense, powerful, incredible in terms of expressing winter in animation in multiple different ways, both the negatives of the cold, but also the positives of it in that last scene with Yuki on the rooftop. In terms of your like spiritual journey and your moral values, I mean that it's the best version of that. Character must confront himself in his own flaws and then overcome them to welcome the spring of a new year. And that scene with Kyon at the end, that's just taken in terms of dialogue, absolutely word for word, completely from the book, but expressed in animation and in the cinematic format in a way that only Kyoto Animation can do. We have an entire giant podcast talking about the movie, but it is so good. It is the best Christmas movie, and I'm looking forward to rewatching the movie in a month for Christmas. All right. Now then, my number 1, Jonathan. This was, I thought long and hard about this, and I have picked what for me is the piece of media, and it's a piece of literature that embodies most fully, and this one is not a joke, it is completely serious, the ideas of Christmas in the modern world. And you're smiling because you think I'm setting up a joke. I'm not setting up a joke. This is the most serious one on the list. It's a poem, and I'm going to read the poem in its entirety. It's a poem that is fairly famous. It is Church Going by Phil Larkin. People might know the last stanza of this poem because it has a very famous line in its last stanza. But this poem, I'm going to read it in its entirety. It's not super long. and then talk a little bit about why does this, to me, embody not just Christmas, but Christmas in the modern period. And by modern period, I mean 20th century on, because I think I as a person who is not religious, struggle sometimes with Christmas in our society. And this poem is the thing I think of when I think about these kinds of issues. So this is Philip Larkin. This poem is from 1954, Church Going, and I'm going to recite it for you here now. Once I'm sure there's nothing going on, I step inside, letting the door thud shut. Another church, matting, seats and stone and little books. Sprawlings of flowers cut for Sunday, brownish now. Some brass and stuff up at the holy end, the small neat organ, and a tense, musty, unignorable silence brewed God knows how long. Hatless, I take off my cycle clips in awkward reverence. Move forward, run my hand round the font. From where I stand, the roof looks almost new, cleaned or restored. Someone would know. I don't. Mounting the lectern, I peruse a few hectoring large-scale verses and pronounce, "Here endeth," much more loudly than I had meant. The echoes snigger briefly. Back at the door, I sign the book, donate an Irish sixpence, reflect the place was not worth stopping for. Yet stop I did. In fact, I often do, and always end much at a loss like this, wondering what to look for, wondering, too, when churches fall completely out of use, what we shall turn them into, if we shall keep a few cathedrals chronically on show, their parchment, plate, and picks in locked cases, and let the rest rent-free to rain and sheep? Shall we avoid them as unlucky places? Or, after dark, will dubious women come to make their children touch a particular stone, pick simples for cancer, or on some advised night see walking a dead one? Power of some sort or other will go on in games and riddles seemingly at random, but superstition, like belief, must die. And what remains when disbelief has gone? Grass, weedy pavement, brambles, buttress, sky, a shape less recognizable each week, a purpose more obscure. I wonder who will be the last, the very last, to seek this place for what it was. One of the crew that tap and jot and know what Rudolphs were? Some ruin bibber randy for antique, or Christmas addict counting on a whiff of gown and bands and organ pipes and myrrh? Or will he be my representative? Bored, uninformed, knowing the ghostly silt dispersed, yet tending to this cross of ground through suburb scrub because it held unspilt so long and equably what senses found only in separation, marriage and birth and death and thoughts of these, for which was built this special shell. For though I've no idea what this accoutred frosty barn is worth, it pleases me to stand in silence here. A serious house, on serious earth it is, in whose blent air all our compulsions meet, are recognized and robed as destinies. And that much never can be obsolete, since someone will forever be surprising a hunger in himself to be more serious, and gravitating with it to this ground, which he once heard was proper to grow wise in, if only that so many dead lie round.
Damn. I did not know that is the poem that the Serious House on Serious Earth came from.
Yes. It is a hell of a poem. It's one of my favorite poems
Yes, it is.
from the 20th century. So just to break it down a little bit about why did I pick this one. So it's not explicitly about Christmas. Obviously, it does mention Christmas in the poem. To me, this is, as someone who has a complicated relationship with religion and Christianity, as someone who is not religious, but has always been sort of confounded by the ways in which it exists in our society, in which you obviously cannot help but confront it living as an American. Christmas is an essential part of that, as both this celebration that is inherently religious, it has the word Christ in it, and yet we have this notion of the secular Christmas. It's this thing we're all expected to celebrate. And this poem, Churchgoing, I think it really breaks down for me like the way in which I interface with religion and the temptation of wanting this thing that tells you these answers and gives you this sort of foundation of this notion of, in a modern world where everything feels like it is ironic, in a modern world where everything is sort of removed from you, that religion grounds things in a way that, as the poem says, is serious. It is a serious house on serious earth. And that there is something, even to someone like me who has no faith in any religion, who does not believe in a God, certainly does not believe Jesus Christ was the Son of God, that even I hesitate to be, rude or sort of like dismissive of an actual church, that the place still feels sacred. It feels like a serious house on serious earth. It is imbued with that quality because of the culture and the society in which I live. And Christmas feels much the same way. It is this unescapable thing that you must exist within. And it feels like in a world of irony, and even when that irony tries to target Christmas, there is a fundamental seriousness, a sort of spiritual grounding to it that underpins the whole thing, that prevents even someone like me, a very grouchy person, to be all bah humbug about the whole thing. And so I think church going really kind of captures that complicated quality of feeling like all this stuff is so old-fashioned. This notion of Christmas is very silly and ridiculous. And yet at the same time, I cannot profane Christmas because it does still essentially feel sacred. It does still essentially feel serious. And there's no piece of art that expresses that in a way like Church Going by Phil Larkin does.
I had no idea that a list that began with Doctor Who ending of episode 7 of Dalek's Master Plan would end in such a profound place. But I can say with certainty, Sean, in the 4 episodes of Purely Academic we've done, this is my favorite segment. This was so good. You rose to the occasion. I love this list.
It took me a long time to come up with this list. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Just to read them through again, because it is a very silly list. My number 10 was the ending of episode 7 of the Daleks Master Plan. My number 9 was Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. My number 8 was Coming Home, the 2009 Folgers commercial, more commonly known as the Folgers Incest commercial. My number 7 was the 360 game Sneak King. My number 6 was Dawn of the Dead, the original. My number 5 was episode 38 of Ultraman Taro, the Ultra Christmas Tree. My number 4 was the medieval poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. My number 3 was the video game Witch on the Holy Night. My number 2 was The Disappearance of Suzumiya Haruhi, the movie. And my number 1 is the poem Church Going by Phil Larkin. That, Jonathan, is a top 10 list.
Good fucking job. That was great. I love it. I feel like we know you better now, from the incest commercial to the beautiful poem. Sean, what is your assignment for me for January's Monthly 10?
All right, I'm very excited for this list, Jonathan. So January obviously is the beginning of a new year, the year of our Lord, 2025, which is shaping up to probably be a very complicated one. And I was looking at that, and I don't want to have a bummer of a list. And I was thinking, like, what's something that I know is going to be very positive about 2025 that Jonathan can use to make a top 10 list? And I really racked my brain. It was hard to come up with something, but I came up with something that I think I'm very excited about with 2025. And that's that year is going to be divisible by the number 5, which only comes about every 5 years. And numbers divisible by 5 are great. Everyone loves them. You know, it ends in a 0 or it ends in a 5. The math is super easy. It's a nice round feeling number. There's an aesthetic, pleasing quality to it. But I was curious. We've had a lot of years that were divisible by 5. But what are the 10 best in the history of mankind? What years divisible by 5 have been the best? And I would love a top 10 list, a number that also happens to be divisible by 5 of that. And I thought, man, who can I ask but Jonathan Arlack to come up with that list for me?
Excuse me, that's Dr. Jonathan Arlack.
Yes, sorry, Dr. Jonathan Arlack. What, Jonathan, are the top 10 years divisible by the number 5?